Welcome back to another edition of the Pitch Putt Puff Podcast. My name is Roger, aka RGB. Before we get rolling tonight, I just want to take a quick second and give a shout out to our sponsors. First and foremost, 420 Bliss, located at 740 Hoosick Road, Troy, New York, located right in the Walmart Plaza. Make sure you stop in there, check them out. 420 is coming up. I'm not sure if they got anything big going on. I reached out to Ty the other day, waiting to hear back. But regardless, make sure you stop in there, check them out. They got pre-rolls, flour, edibles, tinctures, vapes, disposables. They got drinks up there. You name it, they got it. So make sure you stop in there, check them out. Let them know the Pitch Putt and Puff crew sent you. Don't forget to check out my man Marty, Trouble Off the Tee. Real dope podcast with the roundtable last week with Marty, Nick from Makefield Putters, as well as the Upstate Golf guys. Real good time. Let's see how the predictions pan out for the Masters. But overall, a good time. So troubleoffthetee.com. Use promo code RGB. You get 15% off site-wide. And then also we have a special going on for a limited time. You can use the promo code PUFF. Buy one, get one on the polos. So make sure you check those out. troubleoffthetee.com. Not only does he have merch, the merch is all based off a book. So make sure you check out his Spotify, Trouble Off the Tee. It's an audio book narrated by Jake Adams from Country Club Adjacent. Real good listen. So make sure you check them out. We'll get into our guest here shortly. Going to stay in the cannabis world tonight. So make sure you guys tune in. Appreciate you. Welcome back to the Pitch Putt and Puff Podcast. Going to bring in a special guest here for you guys this evening. I met her up at 420 Bliss when I originally met Ty and got the sponsorship deal with the 420. Joining me tonight is Kimber from Chime and Chill. Kimber, what's up? Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, Roger. I'm excited to be here.
No, this is awesome. Even the short period of time I spoke to you up at the store, I learned so much. So I was really excited to get you on. You got a real interesting story.
Thank you.
I'm curious to hear about that and what you've been doing in the cannabis world lately. So
why
don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So my name is Kimber, and my favorite place to be for the past 6 years has been New York State dispensaries. 20 years ago, if somebody would have said that I would be saying that, I'd be blown away. But like most people who are kind of in the space, I got really sick and couldn't really figure out what was wrong with me back in the early 2000s. And it eventually led me to using cannabis as more than something like I just smoked because I was sad all the time. Mm-hmm. And I started to look at the plant really, really differently. And having that different perspective really changed my life. It helped me be able to find ways to help myself that maybe didn't really make sense, mm-hmm. but were making a difference. And my background has always kind of been research and asking why. I used to be a journalist. So I think having that background always has you talking to people about, well, says who and where did you find that out? And in the world of cannabis, it's kind of like flying a plane while some dude is building out the engine. Mm-hmm. And you're like, maybe we'll get across the Atlantic. Right. And that's kind of been the last 6 years for me. Mm-hmm. I fell into the space in Long Island. I had my own brand called Chime and Chill. It eventually evolved into that in 2018. But I focus on pre-dosed oral solutions that have no THC. So I love THC, and my logo is always a clock. And I want people to think about consumption throughout the day, almost like the way you think about a beauty regimen. Mm-hmm. And of course, in our world, 420 is happy hour. Always. But there's so many THC products that are out there. I want to help people enhance their elevation by layering in these minor cannabinoids while they consume, however they find their best method. If it's burning, if it's dabbing, if it's making an edible affect you better. Mm-hmm. And then I want to have a way to talk to all of those people in our lives that still don't understand what we are advocating for, educating about why this is such a taboo, why it's something we think they need to be reprogrammed about, and just say, hey, I hear what you're saying. You don't want to be high, but what if I could still use the same plant and just help you feel a little better?
Right. Right.
And that's what I've been doing in medical dispensaries since the program started. New York State's medical program started in 2014. It was called the Compassionate Care Act. And we saw our first dispensaries open in 2016 and 2017. But the program never really flourished. Like, as cool as we are as New Yorkers, and everybody says they love to smoke, we hate weed.
Yep.
We publicly hate weed. Nobody wants to advocate for cannabis, except for this small little circle. And what I started to realize was maybe if we just talked about it a little more, people could kind of come to the realization I came to when I was in my early 20s. I didn't really know what I was hating. Like,
Right.
I had this really, really strong view about why weed was so, so bad and why it was going to ruin my life and ruin my community. But I'd never experienced it. And there was nothing else in my life that I could make these definitive statements about without saying, but Roger, oh my gosh, I can tell you, remember on Saturday, this. I just was repeating something I didn't know anything about.
Right. Yep.
And we all do it. It's
Oh,
become
yeah.
so acceptable. And as I started working in these dispensaries in 2018 and 2019 across the state, I realized a couple of things. The majority of them were downstate near me. I live in Long Island, so I could go to a dispensary in Queens, in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, in Hudson Valley, in Long Island.
Right.
But if you lived out in Syracuse or Utica or in the western part of the region, you really didn't have a lot of access.
No, up here in
And
upstate, we didn't have anything. I
oh
think we
my
had one up
gosh,
in Clifton Park. That was it.
I was just going to say, until GTI opened and they were, Fiorello Wellness, and Katie opened that facility in 2019. It was one of the stores that I partnered with and helped open. And I would go there on a regular basis, and she would send out emails to the patients like, come meet Kimber. Do you have a problem? Do you have a question? And my boss would be like, what are you, like a celebrity? And I'd be like, I don't know, man, but I'm booked with consultations from the minute I get in till the minute I leave. And the best thing in that store is it was the last store I was in right before COVID. And this woman comes in and she has all these rheumatoid problems. And we outline this itinerary for her of how to use cannabis. And then we have, a national pandemic. All the stores are shut down. The whole world just shut down. And I end up going back to that store right after the world reopens. And this woman walks into me as I'm working with another patient, and she goes, well, it worked. And I'm like, excuse me? She's like, and she tells me the whole story. I met you, I did what you said, and it worked. And you have these moments and you're like, oh my God, something
Yep.
like this created this huge change. And I think that became like the most addictive thing in my world,
Yep.
realizing how good you could help people feel.
Absolutely. Because there's people like my mother, for example. She thinks, she's old school. So weed to her is, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing the pitch putt and puff. Like, you couldn't have named it something else and do this and do that.
What will the
And
neighbors say?
Right, that kind of thing, right? But now she started slowly started using like CBDs and stuff, because she doesn't want. My mother will have like a wine cooler, and she's like tipsy. She's a lightweight on everything. So like she slowly does like the CBDs, and she's like, oh, it helps me sleep, or it, whatever the case may be. Like her arm hurts, so she puts the cream on there, or whatever. And she's realizing the effects. I'm like, Mom, there's so many things you can do with this stuff. You don't have to use it just to get high. Like, that's part of the enjoyment part of it, sure. But my back hurts. It helps my back. Like, there's so many other things. And like with the platform, when I got into the whole podcast, I didn't know if I was going to do just a sports one and just talk sports all year, or like I'm a big conspiracy guy, so I didn't know if I was going to go that route. So, but then I needed, like, I play golf all the time, all year round, pretty much. We go on the simulators and stuff. So I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I need an avenue, because there's 1,000 golf podcasts. there's not a lot of golf and weed podcasts. So like I kind of have an avenue where I'm trying to give that platform. Like I've had so many different people on in the cannabis world, and I'm going to continue to do that because it's like with you, there's going to be the conversation we're going to have tonight. There's going to be so much shit that people have no idea about, and the ones that are on the edge are a little bit afraid. It's kind of just like you take that stereotype out of it and just realize what the medicine when you say when you think about what it really is, what the medicine does, and that's what people don't see.
I think the wildest thing in the past 7 years of working in the space is watching the state go adult use, and not in terms of whether or not you agree with the politics or not in the procedure. Like that's not this podcast. But in the medical side, our program's been so limited. I've never had more than 150,000 patients, which means I've never really had more than 60,000 active shoppers across the state to really touch, because most people didn't want to label themselves an American with a disability.
Right.
There are lots of benefits for it. You know, I've had child protective services issues. That card, you know, saved my life. I have a child who unfortunately has a lot of special needs that require special remedies that only can be found in the New York State cannabis program. So he's one of, you know, our 350 minors in the program. And those are all great things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It takes people a lot of courage to walk into these stores. And when you're in our world, you don't think about that. You hear that, you think it's crazy.
Right.
But I've spent the last year taking some of my friends from Legacy, who are longtime New York dealers and chefs of the ladies of Legacy, into legal stores. And they were like, oh my gosh, like I wouldn't even know what to buy in here. There are so many different things, like, Miss Kimber, where's the weed? One of the women said. And I was like, oh, Ali, it's over there. It's in powder and it's in gummies and it's in drinks. And it's not what people are expecting. And the truth is, having adult use means that now the other 19 million Americans who didn't want to get a card can come in and get information, education, and sometimes consultation. So I have this area of expertise where I've been training pharmacists and wellness advisors and doing patient consultations in medical. I've just started extending that into adult use. In adult use, I can't stand there as Kimber from Chime and Chill and hawk my brand because that's steering.
Sure.
And truthfully, I don't really care what you buy when you come into the stores. I want people to come in. I want them to ask questions. I want them to find out what's there, what's different from the dispensary down the block, what's the ingredients in those gummies. I'm allergic to this. My mom can't sleep. My dad can't eat. And actually to know there are people who are going to be like, hey, give me a second. I'll be right back.
Right.
So I've been going in, I've been calling it the I Love New York campaign and partnering with different dispensaries. So far, I've done events at Smacked Village, 144 Bleecker Street in the Village, which is the first adult use social equity dispensary that's opened by a gentleman who was actually affected by what we're trying to resolve with our program. So to be in a Roland store is like mind-blowing. Housing Works, which is the first dispensary that opened in New York City on December 29th in 2022, to be there when you come in and say, hey, on these certain days, you know that I'll be there and you can ask me anything. And people actually came in last Thursday night and went to security and said, hey, I'm here to ask questions. And it was mind-blowing. Because people have this assumption that we're looking for adult use to be very transactional. And there's nothing transactional about cannabis. It's very experiential. When you get a bag from your plug, yes, it may get dropped over a fence, but there's already been that connection where they know what you like. You know, one of the chefs, she'll always check in. You like that candy, mama? Did it make you sleep good? No, it actually, like, it gave me anxiety. I didn't sleep. Okay, so I'm going to there's that real connection to enhancing the way the plant affects us. And that's something that has to be emulated on the retail side. So, like, it's retail weed, and you have to hit numbers. So, you have to be able to upsell people, but you
Sure.
also have to be able to go through 500 items on a menu. You know, you and I met at 420 Bliss, and I was just standing there. People kept coming up to me and they'd be like, "Hey, how much is this?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I don't work here." And they'd
Yep.
be like,
Yep.
"You have a 420 Bliss shirt on." And I'd be like, "Oh, shit. Fuck. Yes. Hi." But it's nice to have somebody when you come in and you're like, I bought the heavy hitters disposable vape and I really, really loved it, but I only have $32. You know, like, exactly. So when you
Yep.
don't have $48 to buy that, I'm going to move you into an heirloom Tahoe because
Yep.
I know you're going to enjoy it. It's going to hit your price point, and I know you're going to come back and see me.
Right.
And that's a really important part of this because people keep talking about your bud tenders being like a bartender. I'm like, no, they're like your hairdresser and
Yep.
your barber and your manicurist, because the way we consume is so intimate. Like, I love concentrate. I love toys. I do a collection for the Canadiva on gadgets. Right now I'm going to drop a dab with my Beam, which is one
There you
of my
go.
favorite new toys. And I love it because it actually uses like a laser beam to
No
heat
shit.
my concentrate.
That's
You're going to
cool.
see me light up the world. I'm so excited.
My smoke of the night is from Honest Farms, blueberry scone. I just got this up there the other day at 420 Bliss. Test this one out here.
There we go. Is my light. I'm laser beaming.
Oh, that's so cool. So I never really, I've always been like I was a blunt guy for the longest time, and then I slowly got off of blunts. So now I do the joints, and we'll hit the bowl every once in a while, or my vapes. But I never really got into the dabs. Like, it was such a process that when I first got introduced to it, I felt literally like a crackhead. I was like, you gotta get a torch, you gotta get this. I'm like, this is too much. Just roll up and let's go sit down on the couch. That was
I
my
agree.
mentality.
I'm not into that. Like, when I started working at a dispensary, I thought the coolest thing was that everybody was a different age and had different administrations. And I'm 50 now, so I was 45 and the average person on my staff was like 25.
Yeah.
Our common movie was Mean Girls because it was the only thing everybody had watched. The kids used to come over to my house on Sunday with Pelican cases, and my husband would be like, "She looks like such a nice girl. Why does she have a gun case?" And I'd be like, "Oh, that's where Sprinkles lives."
Yeah.
And he'd be like, "What the fuck is the Sprinkles?" And I'd be
What
like,
sprinkles?
"Rig." So he'd see these rigs, he'd see these blow torches. Like, I was a chef, like I made creme brulee with a blowtorch.
Okay.
So he was like, "Legit, you're not gonna have eyebrows." But when I started working in the dispensaries and I was really trying to teach people about different methods of consumption, one of my favorite items that I brought to the medical market were distillate droppers. Back in 2020, I wanted to be able to bring in a really young group to the medical program, especially it was right as COVID hit. So it was perfect because it was the only like dab that we had.
Yeah.
So what I love, and I talk about this all the time because I love product, I'm a Puffco girl. Talk about disrupting a market and opening up a form of plant-based medicine to people of our generation.
Right.
I smoke weed. I smoke blunts too. One of my best friends is always like, "Girl, you didn't smoke blunts." She'll see my pictures on Instagram and she's like, "Oh, you guys smoke blunts." And I'm like, "Yeah, everybody smoked blunts in New York."
Right.
Like, that's what we
That's
did.
what we did. Yeah, that was just what we did. Yep.
And then
Everybody.
I remember like in 2010 starting to get chatter from California and make my own vapes. That was my husband's big thing. We'd get pegged, we'd make ourselves 2 grams of oil, we'd be able to vape. And I got really spoiled about the fact I could consume everywhere and nobody knew.
Right.
And it was a really big thing for me because I like being high. And it made me feel really good. I have a blood disease. I have a rare autoimmune condition. I have depression like everybody else in the world. I'm
Sure.
depressed, I'm stressed, I'm anxious.
Yep.
But I also did have a medical condition that had me taking 18 pills a day. I don't take any pills a day, but I'm constantly consuming in different methods and different ways. And
Hmm.
one of my favorite things about concentrate, I like to call it concentrated care, is that when you're taking that inhalation, 70% of the medication has the opportunity to be absorbed into your lungs versus during combustion, up to 30% of the medication has the opportunity to be absorbed in your lungs. And part of that is just the nature of that as we smoke, it's burning. And
Huh.
our MIGs go up in the air. I worked for a guy in corporate
That's
cannabis
crazy.
who would watch me smoke and he'd be like, "Dear Lord, you're just burning your cannabinoids." And they'd be like, "Oh my God, Nate, it's amazing. You want that. That's how you make more money."
Right.
But concentrate, I'm gonna get the entire inhalation, I'm gonna get all this medication.
That's like that's comparable to like a banana. So you ever like if you eat a banana and you put it in a blender, it's more you gain more weight or whatever. But if you just eat a regular banana, it's basically the same thing. It's the same thing you're doing. It's just the way you're doing it.
Different bioavailability. And I always
Yeah.
say to people, like, one isn't better than the other. It's just what's better for you at the right time.
Right.
Um, I love concentrate. I've been waiting for it to come into the New York market for a long time. I'm actually a Connecticut medical patient. I
Okay.
have family in Connecticut, and it was so important to me to be able to get tested and regulated concentrate that I got a card in Connecticut because I didn't want to drive to Massachusetts
Sure.
and support their adult use market, which was a really hard conversation to have because I also worked for a huge multi state operator. And they would always be like, "Why won't you go support Massachusetts?" And I'd be like, "Not only will I not support Massachusetts, I will not allow my license plate to be seen there. I'm the face of New York State regulated cannabis
Gotcha.
and why we should be building this program." And I would always tell people, if you're a medical patient, you're actually letting the government know that this is really important to you. And there are doctors that have been a part of this program since the beginning that are utilizing their patients' information to talk to insurance companies to be like, "Hey, since I started treating Kimber, she only goes to the ER once a quarter. She used to go every week. Since Roger started coming in, I used to give him 3 scripts a month to help him sleep. I don't even see that MF anymore."
Right. Right.
Really show them like what the savings is. And that's what the doctors have been trying to build for us. And that's the only way we'll ever be able to see state-based insurance companies possibly cover this as
Right.
medicine.
Because the state still has to get their money, and the medical field still has to get their money. So if there's a way for them to continue to get their money and not push the pills on us to get their money, that's you know what I mean. That's the
Yeah.
way to do it. If that's what we
And
got, I'll pay the tax if that's what we got to do.
And medical cannabis, everything has taxes. Like when people say there's no tax involved, that's bullshit.
Hmm.
But the difference is on the medical side, the tax is actually paid by the registered organization. So they pay a
Okay.
7% excise tax every time you check out, but it's not on the receipt because they're not allowed to be like, "Hey, I did this for you." So it's just something that's done, but that is a guaranteed tax revenue that has been created for New York State since 2016. Apathetic or not, it's
Hmm.
generated revenue for the state. Now that we have adult use, the exciting thing is that anybody who's 21 plus can come into a store, find somebody to talk to, find a product that might be helpful. Walk in, walk out. You don't need to buy anything. That's my favorite thing. And I
Yep.
like people to know that, especially when they come to see me at different locations. I'm not looking for you to buy things. I'm looking for you to open your mind to a conversation about how this might help you.
Right.
My brand touches on non THC products because for a lot of our elders, when they hear that, it just softens them and they're willing to really sit down and talk about what hurts them.
Right.
Um, Topicals. I make a lot of creams because I'm rheumatoid and my whole body hurts. It helps me, it helps my son, but more importantly, when I look at what some of the other states have done, like Washington, DC, when they started really trying to hit the elder community, they started through topicals because you're not going to get that elevation. You're not going to be stoned. Your
Right.
body will feel relaxed and you'll feel better. And depending what cannabinoids we layer, we can make different effects, but everybody's body hurts.
Mm-hmm.
None of us were like built to be working from
Hell no.
6 a.m. to 11
Listen,
o'clock.
I played football, baseball, basketball for 35 years. I
Mhm,
constantly was playing sports and such, and now I did construction for 10 years. I physical labor at work now. I
mhm.
never I was never a big pill guy. I take pills because I had some heart issues, so I take some pills for that. But other than that, I really try not to take Advil, aspirin, all that shit. I got some CBD from my buddy over at Helium Collective.
Yeah.
This shit is phenomenal. I rub it on my lower back, like starts to hurt, and
Mhm.
normally like that 10 o'clock in the morning point where my back's like
Yeah.
killing me. I'm moving around. I'm feeling good. I'm like, oh man. So today I knew I was going golfing because it was a beautiful day. I slapped some on my back. I threw to 18 holes, no problem. It,
Amazing.
it really was. It was a game changer.
It's so impressive to see how one thing can create such a big effect.
Mm-hmm.
Applying CBD reduces our inflammation in our body and our joints. I
No
like to
doubt.
layer in a couple of extra cannabinoids um, for more of like travel effects. Everything I do is really about like on the go relief. I always say most of us face anxiety when we face the world. So my lotion's like just shy of 2 ounces, but I do CBD and CBN under my PM circle. AM, PM is kind of like my deal.
Okay.
Um, and the CBN numbs our nerves. So kind of like the way you touch the inside of a red pepper and it makes your fingers tingle.
Yeah.
That's what CBN actually does when it goes through our skin. So it's really great for people who have sciatica,
Yeah.
neuropathy, which is me. I have neuropathy. I suffer from painful hives in my skin because my disease is a blood vessel condition. Believe it or not, it actually comes out the most in my skin and my eyes.
Huh.
So blood vessels throughout your entire body, they press against all of the other vascular ligaments and they create swellings in my skin. So the CBN will actually numb the hives in my skin, which is how I kind of went down that path. And then I
Gotcha.
started seeing how much it was helping my son for eczema.
Mm-hmm.
And then reached out to the research team I was working with in Israel to say, I know I bought this because you all told me it would make my son sleep and like go fuck yourself because nothing will make a child on the spectrum sleep. Do
Yeah.
not promise parents with children on the spectrum that you can make their children sleep. You can't.
Right.
Nothing will make, you just can't do that. You can't make
Right.
people eat, you can't make them toilet, and you cannot make them sleep.
No.
But I had all this CBN in my house right before COVID, and I started making oral solutions out of it. And what I realized was really helped me with my muscle spasms. Um, it helped me with a lot of my eye issues. Turns out that it's very helpful for glaucoma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I noticed it made me eat like an animal, which was not something I was looking for.
Right.
But I know that we have a clientele and a consumer base where we're really looking to stimulate appetite. So, kind of like utilizing myself as a guinea pig really helped me identify different key points that when I was talking about this, like in 2020 at Javits, 2021 at the first CWCB Expo, where I showed my new multi cannabinoid line, people were like, you seem very nice. I don't know what you're talking about. I hear a lot of letters, CBG, CBN, CBD,
Mm-hmm.
THCV. And they were like, you kind of sound like you're a little out of your mind. And I'd be like, just try my lotion. Just try
Yep.
it. And
Right.
they'd come back like 5 or 6 minutes later and they'd be like, so what was in that? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, you can order it on my website. And being able to see when things work on
Yep.
people kind of gives you like that confidence to push past your imposter syndrome.
Yep.
And I was always really lucky because people always say, like, how do you get involved in the cannabis space? show up.
Just do it.
So somebody brought me to a Women Grow meeting in August of 2018, a girl that I had known from high school. And she was like, I really think this could change your life. And I was like, you sound like a crackhead. And I went to the meeting and it changed my life.
Yep.
I walked into a room full of people and I was like, oh my God, I just met my people.
Yep.
Everybody was like entrepreneurial, curious. Some people consumed, some people didn't. There were guys in the room. I didn't expect to see any dudes at Women Grow. There was some dude who like gave a presentation on insurance and somebody who was giving one on social media amidst all these other women who were talking. And I walked out of there and I was like, wow, this whole thing that I've been doing like could actually be a product line. Like I come from product and like I could be doing this. And 6 weeks later, I was at my first event and I was like, hi, this is my product. This is my brand. I have an LLC. And it sounds so crazy to say it like that when I go back on my Instagram page, but I joined this like group, this collective of women that started calling themselves the Canna Divas. And everywhere we would go, you know, their founder, Tanya Osborne, would be like, hello, divas. You know, what are you bringing to community today? How are you educating? How are you advocating? What are you giving back? And I'd be like, I can't give a shit back. And I had no idea what it would mean, but I would just like show up at these different events and I would volunteer and I'd be like, I could set up food, like I could put out programs. And all of a sudden, 5 months later, I was vending with one of my best friends. Like, can you help watch my table? And then I was doing panels. And all the way, everyone around me was like, you can do this. This is great. Here's your feedback. Change this. And it just made me like really believe I could do this. And I won a spot with Women Grow to show at CWCB Expo in the Javits Center, which is the cannabis business convention. Happens every year in June. And it's like where cannabis means business. And it's run by this woman, Christine, who's this huge presence in the space. And I was like, listen, I can go, but I can't exhibit. Like it's $5,000. The first time I won a slot for a day and I got to present and just see the response. And I was like, maybe this could stick.
Right.
The second time I won a 3-day opportunity to have a full booth and meet with buyers in the space and show my terpene sprays and what I thought then was like my new super cool packaging. And Etain Health came over to me, one of the medical dispensaries, and they were so impressed that I had CBN. And, you know, they were like, our pharmacists keep asking about it and nobody has it. And like, you have this? And I was like, not only do I have it, but I have New York State lab testing. I had this product lab tested. And they looked at me and they were like, oh my gosh, how much did that cost you? And I was like, girl, more money than if you buy every piece of product I have to sell you. And they were like, why'd you do it? Because I wanted to sit at the table.
Yeah.
And I got on the shelf in September 2022 with 2 items. And I was still using a processor in Rhode Island. And one of the first women I met at Women Grow at that meeting, back at that August date, said, I'm going to connect you to a real processor. Like, time to grow up and like put on your big girl panties.
Yep.
And she took me to a processor in Hudson Valley. And I showed him like my whole concept and it was in different packaging. And he was like, this is so tiny. It involves so much labor. This is insanity. Like, when do you want to start? Yep. And he liked that I had all my own formulations, that I had this whole history about how I had updated the formulations throughout my community tabling. I had like a little recognition, but I wasn't trying to chase THC. Right. And that made me really stand out because, you know, everybody wants to be in THC. Right. And my whole thing was, there's plenty of THC. I'm going to make that THC better for you. I'm just going to layer myself in. And I updated my formulas last March. Okay. I Etain Health helped me get a real processor, so I was able to get myself post-consumer recycled packaging from a company, RXD Co. in New Jersey. They do a lot of adult use packaging, but they really took a chance on me, and they kind of saw my vision and the fact that I wanted to be able to tell my whole story
Mm-hmm.
and reduce all my stickers and my labeling. And I wanted to be able to show people in community that you could actually follow the regulations and meet that sustainability goal and spend less money. So I actually reduced $1 out of my pricing because I reduced 4 stickers. So it's just like little things like
Little things,
that.
yep.
And to be able to say, like, this is what I used to do in children's toys. Now I'm doing the same thing in weed, and I'm actually doing it for something that means something to me, like my own product line.
Right.
And one of my really good friends and first coworkers in cannabis went on to work at Union Square Travel Agency, and she was in charge of all of the non-THC purchases. And her boss was my first boss also in the cannabis space, and I got to bring my whole line into them in April of 2023 and say, these are my 9 items, like this is what I'm trying to do and this is my story, and they put me on the shelf. And
Awesome.
on May 11th, I got on the shelf at Union Square Travel Agency with a CBD brand that's on Weed Maps. I actually have a Weed Maps page, so you can like
that's
it,
cool.
love it, review it, rate it, find it.
Yep.
And it was this like really big moment of realization of like, you sit there and you go, what if all the things I've like been doing have all been to like lead me up to becoming this version of me? It was like
Yep.
the first moment of like, okay, maybe there was a reason why I got really, really sick. And I went towards something like I never fucking thought I would be doing in a million years. And
Yeah.
I've always made products, so like getting product onto a shelf with my own brands. I've done it in jewelry, I've done it in children's toys, but they all end up in landfills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now I'm doing it for something, and people are coming back and telling me these stories about how they bought this lotion, at the travel agency when they were on vacation, and now they're reordering it even though they live in Minnesota because it helps, her husband's arthritis so much. Or, I bought this oral solution and now my mom sleeps well. Or some guy was telling me that his wife started taking my AM CBD, CBG, and he doesn't like really get it, but she doesn't eat his face. And I was like, oh my God, because she doesn't have as much rage.
Yeah.
And to be able to like help people
Yep.
articulate and understand why the plant may be doing different things for you than it's doing for somebody else because of bioavailability, because of the way we metabolize,
Yep.
because of how much we consume. Like, are
So
you
speaking of that, when we were talking up at Bliss, we were talking about gummies, and I was like, I don't really like gummies. They don't do anything to me. They don't hit me until later. And you're like, oh, you said something that was about I want to say it was like my blood or something. And I was like, and I remember like walking away going, wow, I just learned something. Like, cause I had no idea. Like I would take 100 milligrams of gummies, feel nothing. I'm like, do I take another 100 milligrams of
Yeah.
gummies to really waste them here? Or
It's not for everybody. So my favorite thing about the plant, one plant, myriad of different medications. And again, one thing isn't better or worse. It's just what's better for you. I'm not a gummy person. I don't really love them. Um, they incite really bad behavior in me. I have an eating disorder, so it triggers like candy for me. They're so delicious. You don't feel anything. So like they're so delicious. Not a
Yep.
great thing for me. It's not intentional. However, on the medical side, I fought and I advocated to get choose to the market in a program that didn't allow them because there are people who just can't swallow a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who can't hold a tincture or an oral solution under their tongue. And there are children with medical issues that might not be able to find that medication approachable if it's not in a form for them. There are elders in the program who have the same issue. A gummy is something we all can look at and go, I know what this is.
Right.
And when we know, we're not as scared. However, there's this expectation that you're going to eat a gummy and you're going to be lit. And
Yep.
it just doesn't work that way.
Nope.
It's a big journey. I feel like with Schoolhouse Rock, when they do like how, a bill gets up the hill,
Yeah.
is kind of like the next thing of like how cannabis moves through our body and it converts. And the way it converts when we eat it into these stages from Delta 9 to Delta 11, and our stomach acid is involved, and what we ate is involved, and did you eat carbs? Did you have any olive oil? So many variables.
Right.
And then it's got to be digested, and then it's got to get into your intestines. You're talking about 2+ hours to really feel that. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that people don't have that expectation.
Yep.
So I always tell patients, gummies don't work for me. I feel that I nothing happens to me. I went to a doctor. I explained this to him. I got tested to see if I had the enzyme in my liver. I was like, I'm an Ashkenazi Jew. I guarantee you I don't have the enzyme. And the doctor said, a lot of Jews do have a problem absorbing cannabis this way. But unfortunately, my friend, you have the gene. And what he helped me identify was the fact that I would eat this gummy at 9 o'clock at night. And when I would get up to go to the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning, I had what we call ugly eyes, where your eyes are all fucked up. They're dry. You're high.
Yeah.
It's not the high you're looking for because it's not the same as smoking, but you're high and you have to go back to bed. So
that's 100%. I wake up like hungover, like a weed hangover.
It's so not for me.
Yeah.
So
I hate that shit.
I hate it. So my doctor was like, now that you've articulated it, he's like, how can you use that to benefit you? And there are a lot of ways. So on the medical side, and they sell them in the New York adult use market, there's a chew by a company called Matter. 5 milligrams THC, 20 milligrams CBD, comes in orange, comes in green apple. I buy the green apple. It makes me tired, but I'll notice that when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I do go back to sleep. But when I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, I get out of bed feeling good.
Right.
And I love that. And that helps me identify that this is going through my entire digestive system. And it's almost 8 hours later where I'm feeling the beneficial after effect. And for me, as someone who's rheumatoid, it makes my body feel loose and great. And maybe I don't need as much of something until 10 o'clock in the morning. But for the most part, people want to feel things immediately. I like cannabis you can put underneath your tongue. I like to smoke, obviously. I like glass. I like to burn. I'm trying, I laugh. I always say I'm trying to smoke less joints, and I can hear my best friend like 7 minutes away going, "Why?" I told somebody I don't like edibles recently, and she was like, "What?" I love chocolate. Chocolate's my favorite thing. I think I was trying to push chocolate on you at 420 Bliss.
Yeah.
One of my favorite chocolate bars in the program is by a company, Soft Power Sweets, and it's gourmet chocolate. And the reason I like it is that each square is 2.5 milligrams of chocolate of THC in a nice wedge of dark chocolate with cherry and sea salt. So I like the sea salt. I find it very satiating. I can take that 2.5 milligrams when I smoke in the morning and then go do whatever I'm doing, and I'm a little less irritable. But if on Saturday night, I really want to go to sleep and sleep the night through, I can eat 5 pieces. Yeah. So I love that I can control my dosing, which for me is really, really important. I dissolve chocolate on my tongue. I just let it melt away. That way it's not going through the whole journey through my body.
Okay.
It also makes it a little more enjoyable. There's another brand on the market, Hysteria Chocolate. I met the woman who works there. I was like, so I love the dark chocolate. I love it so much I can't buy it. It's so delicious. It has these rich hints of like coffee aftertaste, but they're 10 milligrams in the chocolate, and that's a lot for me.
Yeah.
So for me, I have to like weigh my options, but I love that if you are somebody who has a higher threshold or knows like I'm not going to play with your 2.5 milligrams, like I'm going to eat the whole bar. I
Right.
love that you can do that same effect with something with higher milligrams that still tastes delicious.
Right.
So, I feel like that's something that people don't expect to see when they come into our dispensaries. Chocolate and the edibles aren't really, really expensive either. Most of the chocolate ranges between like $25 and $40, and that can last you over a week, depending
Right.
how you're taking it, or it could be a fun night, depending how you're taking it. Judgment, delicious.
So down in the city, because you're down in Long Island, I know you do a lot of work like in the city area. How do you know? Because I go down there in like Christmas time. How do I know I'm
Mhm.
walking into a legit dispensary down there, opposed to like one of those pop-up shops?
That's my favorite question. Thank you. There's always a sticker that says legal licensed in the corner of the door when you walk in. It is teal and white. It has a QR code on it. And when you scan it, it takes you to the Office of Cannabis Management website. There's a number on it and it starts OCM dash and
Yeah.
it'll be like 23 dash, 0013. It's a real legal store. I always tell people if you walk into a store and there are big, bright pot leaves in the window and you can see the cannabis from the street and you're like, yo, that looks good. It's not legal. If they're
Okay.
giving you a free pre-roll when you come in because you're so handsome, ooh, hey,
Yeah.
baby, I got
Yeah.
one for you. Not legal. If they
Gotcha.
want to burn with you, oh, you lonely? You want to do a dab, baby? Come on in.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
legal.
That's it.
But we could do a dab if you want to do a dab.
Yeah.
Not legal. So
Right.
legal. Medical and adult use. Rhythm.
Huh. Yeah, because when
So
I go down there for help my buddy with his Christmas tree business, and
where are
I
they? Where's he located?
he's down in Hell's Kitchen.
Okay.
So there's literally, I mean, every other corner there's a spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. We just go to the same spot because we've been going there for like 3 or 4 years now, and it's the same
It's not
guys.
legal.
It's probably not at all.
It's
100%.
definitely not.
It's not.
It's definitely
So
if you're going there for 3 to 4 years, the MRTA just had its 3rd birthday.
yeah. So I think this. Yeah,
Sorry, Bobo.
3 years now. So yeah, we've been going up there, but we only go there because we know like that's where we were going.
I can't wait till you come in so we can go shopping and we can do a little broadcast for all of your followers.
There we
And I'll
go.
take you shopping.
Oh, perfect.
There are now 100 licensed legal dispensaries across the state, which I know, again, I can hear everybody going, it's not a lot. It's not, but in comparison to where we were,
Right.
we're moving. A lot of them are still downstate. So really, really important that we all be part of our community board meetings. Somebody said to me tonight, oh my gosh, I can't believe how many stores are in Farmingdale. And I said to the person, yeah, because it's a village. And she said,
Yeah.
excuse me? And I said, Farmingdale Village. So my village was able to opt in. And it was something that we had been talking about during advocacy a couple of years ago, where I was saying that about Long Island. There were all these villages that's your workaround.
Mm-hmm.
So you still do have stores that are like on top of each other because of limited community receptiveness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the city, there are a plethora of stores. I was just in a brand new store that's opening on 72nd in Amsterdam, just a little higher.
Mm-hmm.
Bliss and Lex on 86th and Lex. There are a ton of stores in Queens. You've got Silk Road in Long Island City. You've got Trends in Long Island City. You've got Terp Bros in Astoria. You can go into Brooklyn. You can go into the Bronx. Staten Island has the Flowery in addition to B Medical, and they've got delivery. So yes, is that, a tremendous number of stores for Staten Island? No. But if legal licensed cannabis is really important to you, you can find where you should be going, whether it's the Flowery or B Medical, or arranging your delivery versus going into an illicit smoke shop. And I know everybody has to eat, and I'm all about that, but I've been really consistent about what I've been advocating for since I got into this space. I've been advocating for legal licensed cannabis, and I've been advocating to support our legacy growers, because without our legacy growers, we wouldn't have gotten to this spot. Just like without all of the people who advocated for hemp, we wouldn't have gotten medical cannabis. Without medical cannabis, we can't have adult use. So it's a cycle, and it's really important that we're supporting the right people when we talk about who we want to see eating. I don't want to see us raiding people and going after people, and I don't want to see people losing their livelihood. But if you're doing something that impedes the program, I'm not so excited about that. And when people start talking to me about that, when they're like, but why is it so bad? I'm like, most of the stores that you're looking at, they just popped up over the last 2 to 3 years. So like Cali always had a problem with illicit versus legal, but their illicit market had always been there, and it was forever strong. Our illicit market just popped up and has taken away financial stability from legacy and has prevented legal from moving forward. I don't think that's cool. And I do have friends that'll be like, hey, I have to sell weed into those stores because I can't do enough business in legal. And I get that because everybody has to eat. But then you can't get on social media and be like, oh my God, Jeremy Terp Bros, you're my man. No, you have to pick a line in the sand. And that's really where I spend my time right now, trying to figure out what my place is in terms of, I have a brand, and that's great. That's like having an opinion. You have an asshole. Good for you. But that's not what's important to New York right now. What's important is, how do we get people, when they're passing by these legal stores, to know what they are? So I'm working in these stores. I was in Smacked Village on Friday night, and I was just standing outside in my Smacked Village shirt, and it's a gorgeous area, watching people walk by. They have no idea we sell weed in there. And I know it says licensed legal cannabis on the window, but then I think about it, like, how many people walking by know what cannabis is?
Right.
So you walk by a legal store and you don't see any of the things that we just talked about. You see somebody sitting at a desk. You see a security person standing there ready to check your ID to make sure you're 21 plus, maybe to double scan it depending where you are. If you're near a college or a university, they're not just checking your ID. They're actually scanning it to make sure that it is a real ID, which I think is super, super cool when you talk about like doing the right thing because you should, not because somebody's telling you. So
so that's why they scan my ID when I go in there. Okay, yeah, because the RPI is up there.
They want it, and nobody's like tracking for the most part. Like, it's not about tracking what you bought. It's making sure that you are legal, you are of age. Yes, there is a limit. Legally, we can go into a dispensary. We can buy 3 ounces of weed and 24 grams of concentrate. In the past year and a half, I've never seen anybody do that. I've seen people max out in medical, but I've never really seen that happen in adult use.
And how long? That's what time frame? Like what, a week?
One day, one transaction. So if you went into my Kimber's Cannabis Corner, which you wouldn't do because I don't have an OCM number and I don't have a seal. So when you go into Housing Works on 750 Broadway and you walk in and you walk out with your 3 ounces of flour and your 24 grams of concentrate that Kim sold you, and you go back to your hotel room and you think, Well, I really did want to see Gotham. Like, that's such a high-end looking store. Have at it. New transaction. So
Right.
the question is, what are you going to do with all that cannabis before you go home?
Right.
Because legally, everything you buy in New York as a tourist should be consumed in New York while you're here.
Right.
So you can buy a lot of stuff, you can try a lot of things. I love seeing the difference in the consumers who come in. Like, you have those people who come in who just want daily smoke. They're going to buy a pre-roll, they're going to buy an eighth, they're going to buy a 2-pack of gummies, they're going to buy a disposable vape, and they'll tell you, like, I'm holding over till payday. Or there's somebody who loves to come in and like see their favorite person, which is really, really cool, right? Because it's
Right.
like
Oh,
your
yeah.
hairdresser.
Yep.
And then you have people who are like, what do you have in an ounce? I want my shit. I don't want to talk to you. I'll see you next month.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with either one of those things. But as an associate, you do have to kind of figure out like who's walking through the door and what you have on this menu to feed that need
Hmm.
so that they come back to you, because
Right.
it's retail. And you want to also be able to showcase what you have in your store that somebody else might not have.
Yep.
And I talk about that a lot with Tyler at 420 Bliss, because I love the Albany area and there's so many stores up in Albany and they're constantly opening.
Yeah.
And they all have like a really different experience. I love going to 420 Bliss because I used to work for Walmart. I was a Walmart vendor in children's toys, in housewares, and I love going to Walmart.
Hmm.
It's one of my favorite experiences. It was one of the proudest things in my career, being a vendor at Walmart, and to go into a shopping center where I can go to Walmart and I can go to GameStop and I can get pizza and I can go get shoes for my kid and I can go get weed and then I can go drive and get
Yeah.
it's
You.
so normal.
Yep.
It's like everything I've ever dreamed of. If you don't know what 420 Bliss is, you don't know what 420 Bliss is. So there's no one who could be like, oh my gosh, they're affecting the community, blah, 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 blah. Same thing. If you look in through the windows, all you see is a lovely person sitting at a
Yep.
desk and a big foyer. Most people were asking me, like, are you all a massage parlor? Like, somebody thought it was a gym. I was like, I can work out your spirit. And then there are places like Capital District where smaller store, really specialized menu, super cool vibe, and Home Depot's across the way.
Right.
So
Yeah.
dope. And then you have something
Convenience. It's convenience.
oh my God. And then like
Yeah.
upstate Canna in Schenectady, where
Yep.
like they've got these parking spots and like you just sit there or you wait out line. And it's so like Colorado early days where like 2 people come out and 2 people come in, and it's so amazing to me that you can have all these immersive experiences if you choose to. And that's
Right.
not for everybody. Obviously, like, I'm a weed connoisseur.
Sure.
So I love shopping everywhere and seeing these experiences and how people are buying. But to know that no matter where you are, you can find like a local place that you go into and everyone knows your name.
That's yep. It's great. That's the thing with local. You're supporting local businesses. You're helping the small business owner. So
And
that's what we
local
got to do.
community. So
Yeah.
something like, if you follow me on social media at Kimber Says Hi, every time I go to a dispensary, I also go do something in the community.
Mhm.
Just like I would do if I were going to the Whole Foods in your neighborhood or if I were going to get my hair done. I always end up having a snack. I end up going and doing an activity. I'll do something as silly as walking to find the nearest ATM so I have cash on hand before I go into the dispensary. I like to try to have cash on hand. Helps me not buy too much because I get really excited by like all this. But it also helps me like see what's in the neighborhood. And that's
Mhm.
kind of how it really triggered me, how many illicit shops there were in Astoria. I was there on a Sunday, and in the 3-block walk from the Citibank, Chase, and I could have gone to McDonald's, I walked by a half a dozen illicit shops that were all offering me a free pre-roll.
Yep.
And they were so bold and they were really nice and really friendly and like no shade, like
Mm-hmm.
really nice. I'm sure I'd want to sit down and burn with you.
Right. Right.
But
It's slowing down the process. I never really thought about it that way. This is just
it's
holding everything back.
you're holding everything back, and like people also say this to me. I bought a lot. I love concentrate, and I've been buying concentrate since the very first rounds of concentrate were on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And like everybody gets better with
Right.
time. You have to give people time to find their groove. And to be able to see the difference in people's product and actually sit with one of the manufacturers at an event in October. And I was like, I can so see the difference in the quality of the input from the output.
Yep.
And he was like, "Oh, do you want?" And I'm like, "No, I already bought it all." But like I've been buying it since it was $110 a gram. And people would be like, "Why?" Because I want the state to know it's really, really important to me. And the
Right.
more we teach people about concentrate and we show them tools that make it really easy and
Yeah.
acceptable for them instead of having a blowtorch, it makes it a very approachable consumption method. I do love my
Yeah.
Puffos. I love glass.
Yeah.
Also, part of like my connection back to legacy, like there's nothing better than having somebody with such talent make you something beautiful to enhance your consumption experience. Spend all this time researching like what medications you're going to be buying.
Yeah. It's
Make
so
sure
much
you
more
do that.
convenient than literally than busting out a torch and doing all that. It's craziness how far it's came in 15
It's
years.
it's also really crazy in terms of the fact that it can be so easy
Mm-hmm.
and so acceptable and approachable. Like again, there's a big event going on in the city right now with one of the women in the space. Her name is Queenie, and her whole thing is a dabber is born.
Okay.
And she will bring out really gorgeous glass pieces and make it very sophisticated,
Mm-hmm.
which is a different customer, not better, not worse, just different.
Different. Yeah.
I'm going to
Different.
grab a phone for my boy. Do you need a phone, my
Go
little
ahead.
boy? Yes, you
Take a
need my
quick break
phone.
right now.
So, another thing I talk about very openly is I'm a special needs mom.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a very rare autoimmune condition and blood disease, and my son has non-speaking autism, epilepsy, and something called pancytopenia, which
Okay.
means he doesn't make blood. So we like trick his because right? Did you know that your body could just not make blood?
No, I didn't.
Me either. So I learned that last year after 62 days in the ICU. But I had a great doctor in one of like my third rounds who was like, I'm going to talk to you in a language you understand. She said, you understand manufacturing. She goes, the body's the factory. You're the
Yeah.
salesperson. You have to sell blood. What's your job in sales? Make sure supply chain can make you an end product.
Right.
This is what you feed the supply chain. So every day I make my son, just thinking about it, 37 milliliters of different vitamins in 3 milliliter droppers that I just shoot in his mouth. And that tricks his body into thinking he's got good nourishment.
Yeah.
So it'll make blood because most kids on the spectrum
Holy
have
shit.
really, really restrictive eating.
Okay.
So my son only eats bacon, Gerber baby fruit pouches,
Okay.
and Carvel coffee ice cream.
Hell yeah.
So when I go to Carvel, I spend the equivalent of an eighth of Chronics every time I go. So like
Oh
the
man.
owner asked me one day, like, what does this cost you? I'm like, basically like an eighth a day. And he was like, what? I was like, oh, you drink, right? I was like, dude, I'm spending $75 a day plus a tip. I was like, I don't
Oh.
smoke such good weed. I smoke too much.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Chocolate
But
ice cream or
but
coffee ice cream.
it's such like specific things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also really interesting to see that my son had all these health issues for 5 years. They all related back to weakened immune system. COVID just kind of like destroyed everything.
Yeah.
But every time things get back on track, it's always related back to cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I talk about it very openly because a lot of the autism moms will come to me and they're like, hey, I put my son on CBD and I'm not finding the results you're talking about. I'm like, well, kind of depends what you're looking for. So, in doing a lot of research back to those moms in California who are our real pioneers,
Yeah.
they were giving their kids to manage behaviors, ratios of THC and CBD. So they were actually adding THC into their child's diet
Huh.
because California had a medical program. So being able to really look at that history at things like Weed the People
Yeah.
and see how Myra Gordon was actually like taking notes and tracking different things helped me kind of figure out how to do the same thing with my medicine
Yeah.
as well as with my sons, and made me feel like I was doing something really legitimate.
Yeah.
uh, the first time I heard my son actually try to say something
Yeah.
was a couple of months after he had started taking Haley's Hope CBD. And he actually, we were at a park and you heard him point to the dog and say, Mata, Mata. And we were all like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, I really, it was 2017, 2018. Like you weren't telling people that you were giving your kids CBD.
Exactly.
I had
Exactly.
one therapist that I told, and people at school would be like, something's just so different with him. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I'd be like, interesting. And they'd be like, what do you think it is? And I'd be like, I don't know, maybe we're happier at home. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
really was afraid to say things to people. And I would always tell parents when they'd be like, what are you doing? And I'd be like, hey, I buy this from this company. I got myself a wholesale code so we can get it half price. I'm not looking to make any money on anybody. But if you want to buy this with me, like it helps us all get it for a better price.
Mm-hmm.
Try it yourself. Your
Yeah.
kid can't tell you how it's going to make him feel, but you could take it. And the moms would be like, wait, what? Be like, I'm sure your doctor said that to you when you went in, when they said, hey, you can give Tristan Ritalin. I'm sure they were like, hey, Lori Beth, take a Ritalin and see
Yeah.
how, and they're like, wait, what? I'm like, so you can try this, but I'm going to tell you, if you like how it makes you feel, this is like liquid gold and you are not worthy of this. I'll get you on a different product because it was expensive.
Yeah.
And the parents, outside of one parent, everybody stayed with it. A couple of people joined me and went into the medical program, but without having that background to really be able to understand what they were monitoring in the medication, there were a lot of different behaviors that came out, especially as some of the kids were closer to puberty. Cannabis enhances our sensations. So for a lot of kids on the spectrum, not really understanding appropriateness,
Sure.
masturbation is something like our kids get behavioral plans for. Really awkward, uncomfortable conversation, like sitting
Right.
in kindergarten, like, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, one of the teachers was like, listen, kids, typically developing kids, they're taught shame. And kids on the spectrum don't really care what you think. So she's like, we just teach about this is private, not at this time. Like, I want the bathroom versus I need the bathroom. And hearing things like that made me realize how important having this conversation about cannabis really was. That just like autism, our cannabis consumption is a spectrum. It's not one size fits all. It's not one description fits all. You may find a great way to use an edible now that we've had this conversation for more of like a long-term relief, but it may never be your goal. I buy edibles all the time when I see the different sales because I'll be like, oh my God, it looks so, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I just said to one of the pharmacists, like, don't do this. Just don't let me buy it. Somebody in adult use said the same thing to me. He was like, I'm taking this out of your basket. You're going to be so unhappy with this. I was like, thank you. And I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and that
right.
is being a really good salesperson, because next time I go in, I'm going to be like, hey, Noah, just put shit in my basket for me.
Yep.
Because
Take
there
care
are
of me. See what
people
you got.
people come in. You see that at 420 Bliss. Like they just come in and they look at the same team and they're like, help me, love me.
Yep.
And that's that. And I love how inviting the stores are. Like you'll find couches and people will share different experiences. And the truth is, there'll be days you'll find people who are just nasty and don't want to talk to you. And there'll be days you don't want to talk to anybody.
Sure.
And you have this relationship, and it is what it is. It's a really special consumer experience. And at a dispensary, when you're standing on that side of the counter from me, the truth is, it doesn't really matter where you come from, or how much money you have, or what your life experiences are. You're really only there for one reason. You want some kind of relief.
Yeah.
Something in your life makes you feel less than, and you're looking for somebody to help you have ease.
Yep.
And I can't think of any other experience in my world that I've seen to date where people are able to have that basicness together. Have nots, haves.
And it can bring so many people, like you were saying earlier, together, though, like from all different ages, races, whatever the case may be. It's just so many people together. You could go to at a party back in the day, someone would be smoking a joint. All of a sudden, that circle would get a little bit bigger. Oh, who's got that? Who? Boom, boom, boom. You know, it's what
It's
it did.
amazing. I always talk about that 70s show, like when we opened the first medical dispensary that I worked at in Long Island, and I would always talk about the circle of the cannabis connection and how through that, you know, it's your community and you're caring. But you would watch this show and they'd always sit in a circle and they'd always smoke weed, and the only thing that would change would be the different people in the circle.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter how old you are. Like, I love working in cannabis that somebody I work with who's equal in level, you know, she's 28 years old.
Yeah.
There's no other industry where you could literally be half my age and we could be equal. I think that's sick.
That's so cool.
In a great way.
That's so cool. And I noticed too, like I had I don't know if you ever heard of a girl out of Michigan, the Turk Queen was her name. I had her on last week. She'll be coming out for a 420 week episode as well. Another women in cannabis. There's so many. I'll hook you up with her. There's so many women in cannabis. Like as I'm doing like this whole looking for people to interview and stuff, and like talking to different vendors and trying to get people on, they're always connecting me most likely with a female, like most of the companies. And I'm like, oh, okay, like let's set it up. It's surprising. It's surprising to be honest with you.
In New York, when I was working in corporate cannabis, I would always try to explain that, and people would look at me like I had 19 heads, and I would be like, well, the legacy community really got held up by the women. Yeah. Like, your man went to jail. Yeah. He got arrested. That's why we have the program we have. And I
remember when you were speaking of the medicine thing, like I remember watching this documentary years ago, and this kid had epilepsy. And when he started taking, I think, his CBD, his seizures slowly like faded, and eventually I think they were pretty much gone once they figured out the dosage and everything else. And I remember watching that documentary, and I was like, how they, the push of the legalization and everything else as well. So that was years ago. Years ago.
And I love those things. But I also share with people all the time, my son takes anti-seizure medicine twice a day. So when my son had his first seizures, grand mal seizures, unconscious in his bed, choking on his vomit, snowstorm while we're waiting for the ambulance, just fucking like,
oh my God.
And the craziest thing is that when this happened, it was before legalization. So as my son is convulsing on this snowy day, my husband's first thought as I'm running through the house, like to go outside in the snow to try to get my son conscious, was, oh my God, the police are going to come and we have weed. Yeah. And our house smells like weed. And I can just see him going, oh my God, what are we going to do? And I had been sitting at the kitchen table, like just smoking all day because I was in the medical program. I had legal weed. I had vaporizers. Yes, I was burning, but like whatever. It was my house. And to think like, oh my God, like your kid could die. And that's like your first thing, like, oh my God. And then, which was just, wow. To go to the hospital and then be talking about like different things in terms of, I need Ativan before you put an IV. and they would be like, oh my God, you're a drug seeker. Like, we're going to have to call CPS on you in the hospital because you're somebody who's looking to keep your child stoned. And I'd be like, oh my God, my kid has nonverbal autism. Like, are you out of your fucking mind
Right.
here? Like, I want this not to be a fucking disaster. And to have it then happen a second time with my son and have the ambulance come back and be thinking like, holy shit, it's such a different world of before legalization.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we were medical, having that card like really saves me with CPS
Yeah.
because I had a 24 line complaint against me. Like most people get a 4-line complaint. I had a 24 line complaint. Mom was too stoned. Mom didn't care. Parents are not concerned. My son had more medical records than anybody could afford toner to print out. I'd been to so many specialists. The doctors were like literally looking at me going like, do you want something to be wrong?
Right.
And I would be like, no, but just because you can't find something wrong doesn't mean things are right. Like, I'm telling you, it's not right.
Right.
And it took them 4 years to figure it out. It ended with my son just having spinal surgery to have fluid, like just crazy shit. And there was only one doctor who would just constantly be like, Mom knows best. He'd be like, if Mom says, Mom knows. And I'd be like, I really appreciate you. And to fast forward for my son to have this spinal surgery and to go into a major national children's hospital and have like my pre-interview with them and them being like, you know how serious this surgery is, and you know he can't move for 24 hours. So like, what's our plan? How do we want to keep him sedated? Are you open to morphine? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And the anesthesiologist is like, listen, we can't play around. This kid has really highly active receptors. He's a cannabis patient. We don't want him in pain. So I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Right.
My son came out of surgery and was like out, but heard my voice and just sat up and started moving. And all of a sudden you just see the anesthesia, Mom, I'm going to push 2 minutes. And I'm like, okay, Mom, I'm going to, okay. And as he's done and he's taking off his gloves, I was like, what the
happened? Yeah. Holy
and he was like, you know what? It's been a really long time. Like, we've learned a lot from you. We've seen a lot. No need to like torture you. Like, and he said it to me, like, is life not hard enough?
Right.
And I was like, you know what? Really, really appreciate that. And part of that is being willing to be open and like really own your truth. And some of it's ugly. I'm a medical patient. A lot of people don't consume the way I do. I'm sure like my son walks freely through my house. I consume. I don't have an issue with that. Just like I don't have an issue with people who walk through their homes holding wine glasses. Not my thing. I have neuropathy and I have convulsivity issues. I'll break that glass. That's why I have a little stopper so I don't break my glass. But like, to each his own. And I always think about the fact that maybe my dialogue would be very different if I had a typically developing child who could say a lot of things in public, but I'll never know that. Right. So now instead I'm in a situation where I have a child that has really special medical needs, where they were looking at putting a feeding tube in him, which would totally change our entire lives. And all these doctors like really bullying me into it. And one pediatrician saying, do not do this. And I have him actually eating activated flour. And he's now the healthy weight he should be. And everybody talks about it. And they're like, oh my gosh, hungry boy. I didn't decide. He actually gravitated towards it. He'd see like, a half-used joint, and he'd rip off the filter and he'll actually take that flour and put it into his fruit. And I've tried to give him like decarbed flour. After I vaporized it, he throws it out because I've already taken all the medicine out of it.
Yeah.
So
He
it's like been
knows.
very interesting. And people say it to me all the time. They're like, oh my gosh, he looks amazing. I'm like, he does, right? I'm like, yes, it's all the minor cannabinoids, but this has been the best way for me to get him to really balance out that THC
Yep.
without it being a powder or an oral solution. Um, and he kind of directed himself there, which, again, not all communication is verbal,
Sure.
but I've been talking about it with a lot of different people in the community, and they'll be like, wow, that's so fascinating, because there are a
Yeah,
lot of
that's I'm
things that
fascinated right now. I'm just like sitting here like, wow, that's just so for him to just go and do it though. That's what's
to just
fascinating.
do it. And like, so something, it started where he would just like unravel any pre-rolls that he would find, and it started with just like destroying the filters. At one
Okay.
point I was filling pre-rolls with lavender, but I hate the smell, just to
Yeah.
have something for him to destroy. Then I started realizing, after the back surgery, realize it's something where I noticed, um, I had to take him off all cannabis before surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So if you consume cannabis on a daily basis and you're going to go have a medical procedure, not only do you need to tell your medical team, and you need to be really, really honest about your consumption, but you need to stop your consumption. And they help you design a window for how long that should be. For
Right.
my son, it was 4 to 6 weeks, because cannabis is a blood thinner. So, God forbid you have an issue during your procedure, any internal bleeding, things we
Right.
need to be aware of.
Sure.
So, after the surgery, I never really got him back on the same exact regimen. I had him more on the AM solution with the CBD and the CBG, and I saw how happy it was making him. I saw that the CBN was definitely making him very relaxed, too relaxed. I didn't like it. I had a
Mm-hmm.
kid who was in ICU. I want to hear you running around.
Right.
Um, and then I saw this with this activated flower, and I just started vaporizing like crazy, because I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to see, like, what if I do this and what if I do that?
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing thing to realize that every part of the plant can offer a medicinal option if you're willing to be open,
Right.
you know. And it's just, listen to your body, because it
That's
tells
it.
you so many things.
That's it. And it's perfectly normal now. It's perfectly normal. There's you don't everybody can take away the stereotype and all the other nonsense. It really is just it's just getting a little crazy. But
And the other thing I like to always share is that when people talk about things that they see in their community that they don't like, where they're like, I don't like that those shops, those cannabis stores are open so close to my church or my temple or my kid's school. Those aren't legal stores either,
no.
because we actually have rules and guidelines for where we're allowed to be positioned. So when people say that to me, I'm like, we don't want to be there either. Like, we don't like that those stores are there either. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that when you approach somebody like me who's in the space, and there's so many of us, regardless of where you're originally coming from, I know that you're going to find somebody who's going to be willing to have a really open and honest dialogue with you. We don't have an agenda to push outside of the fact we want people to have open and honest dialogues. You don't have to like cannabis. You don't have to support cannabis. You don't have to come into a store, but you should be really excited about the fact that there is an option for someone who might find it beneficial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kimber, let's wrap up here with these three questions.
Yes.
I'd like to ask, what's your favorite strain that you ever smoked?
Oh my God, in my entire life.
Let's
Oh,
go.
Malawi Wowie.
Malawi Wowie.
Yeah, great
Okay.
sativa. One of my favorites.
Nice. Nice.
Oh,
And then a joint or a blunt?
joint with
Okay. So
filter,
yeah,
preferably roll 69.
I gotta have a glass tip in there. Absolutely.
Oh, I would love a glass tip. I'll hit
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. My favorite strain ever was sour diesel, the old school sour diesel from like the late
Oh,
'90s, early 2000s, the official.
I feel like
back in
we'll
the day.
never have that again.
Nope, it's gone.
Dead.
I just watched the documentary on the guy AJ. I was AJ something.
Yep.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I watched the documentary about how he was growing it up here in like upstate New York. He had a guy in Albany doing it and shit. And I was like, damn, I wish I knew that plug back in the day. I would have been doing pretty good.
Right?
Shit. Coolest person you ever smoked with or you want to smoke with?
Oh, I know who that is. The coolest person I've ever smoked with was Branson.
Okay.
Who's I got to smoke with him at the Juneteenth party that was organized by Fab Five Freddy, with his Be Noble brand. And Bernard Noble. I've smoked weed with Bernard Noble and his wife several times, and he's the face behind the Be Noble brand, which is a brand that Fab created. It's part of the Grass is Greener documentary.
Okay.
So like two icons of different parts of culture. Like, wow. I really would love to smoke weed with Be Real. I met him on the street right outside MJ Impact. I know a lot of people have smoked with him. Fuck them. I want to do it.
So Be Real's got his podcast, Dr. Green Thumb Show. And I'm kind of cool with the guys from We Don't Smoke the Same, which are affiliated with them.
Yeah.
So I've had one of the guys, XG, on, and I'm supposed to have the host, E-Zone, coming on. I got something lined up for Thursday. Our schedules have just been so. I was supposed to do it 2 weeks ago. I had to reschedule, and then like we've been going back and forth. Like, and he's a busy dude, so like I get it, but I'm trying to lock that in for a nice little 420 episode as well. So that'd be dope if I could get that.
So who's your favorite person that you've smoked with?
My favorite person I've smoked with. Man, I don't think I've ever really smoked with anybody famous or anything like that. Nothing that I smoked with a comedian. I mean, I don't know most
Did
famous.
You laugh?
Yeah, I laughed at the comedian. We went to a show out in Buffalo, me and my buddy, and we were outside smoking a joint, and the comedian came out, and he's like, we're bullshit with him, and I just passed it to him like normal, just not even thinking. And this was like post-COVID and everything else, and people were all scared and shit, but we didn't give a fuck. So we passed it around, and we just fucking smoked with him. But the one guy I'd want to smoke with would be this basketball player, Jason Williams. He used to play for the
St.
Sacramento
John's?
No, he
not that
for,
Jason Williams. Okay.
No, not that one. Not the one who shot the limo driver. They called him White Chocolate. He played for the Sacramento Kings with like Chris Webber and probably early 2000s.
Cool.
So that was my guy. I always did like the moves he did on the basketball court. So that, and he's a golfer now too because he's older like me. So it's a good correlation. So that'd probably be my guy. Him or Method Man. I'd like to smoke with Method Man too. Yeah.
I could see that. My girlfriend Kate smoked with him. I have not.
Yeah. That'd be a good time. Especially back in the day, How High Method Man.
Oh, that would be so cool.
The good old days.
Well, are you going to do any golf events? Do you have any golf events coming up?
So I'm affiliated to the with New York Autoflower Helium Collective. We're doing something July 18th up at Orchard Creek, which is in Altamont. We're doing something up there, and then I'm working on something that just kind of popped up. Nothing official yet, but yeah, there's possibility for something up in Saratoga.
Cool. That seems very normalized. I love that.
It's getting
Get a little delivery on the 9th hole.
It's getting there. I've been networking with some courses, trying to just come up and do like a course review. And obviously, the name, they see it, they know what we're going to be doing. So I've been getting a good response. So
cool.
I have to go to the private courses more than like the municipal because they're going to have playgrounds there and all that shit. So I get it. So
I want to see if we can do something for Father's Day together. I'm doing a series with the Canadiva, which is a group of online, mostly women in the cannabis space. But we're doing Bring Your Mom to the Dispensary for the month of May to really, again, create that normalization. We're going to be doing something with Dads for June But maybe we could do something where we take them to putt deliver.
We can do something. We'll figure something out.
Psyched.
Let's do something. Yeah, I'll talk to you in the messages there,
I
and then
love it.
we'll figure out. Now, where can everybody find you in the Chime and Chill?
You can find me, Chime and Chill, you can find at the travel agency in New York City, in Brooklyn at Housing Works. If you go up to Rochester, you can find us at MJ Dispensary. We're with the Highest Peak in Potsdam, New York, which is the first women-owned dispensary. With Smacked Village, with Happy Days Long Island. I am making my rounds. Next up will be Terp Bros in Queens. You can also find us www.chimeandchill.com. You can follow me for our dispensary exploits at the Canadiva on Instagram. And on Instagram, we're at Chime It Up.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate everybody tuning in to the Pitch Putt and Puff podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Later. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate Kimber jumping on. That was a dope episode. She's got her knowledge in the game is. I learned a lot from her. On the one day I was up at the store, I thought it'd be a real good conversation. She's got a real crazy story. Also, check out her blog on her webpage. Really appreciate her jumping on. Make sure you guys check out 420 Bliss, located at 740 Hoosick Road, Troy, New York. And don't forget to check out Trouble Off the Tee with the Lincoln Ross hat here. Dope polos. Buy one, get one free on the polos. Promo code PUFF. Site-wide, you get 15% off. Promo code RGB. Trouble Off the Tee. Shout out to Marty, Nick, and the Upstate Golf. Nick from Makefield Putters and the Upstate Golf guys for jumping on the round table. Just going to try to stay busy here. Golf's coming up, so we're going to see a lot of content on the Instagram page and YouTube. So stay tuned. The Pitch Putt and Puff crew got some things in the work, and we're going to be cooking. We'll stay in the kitchen. Appreciate everybody tuning in.